Good morning, kids. Welcome to Digital Learning Day for today, Monday, April 27th. We've got a lot to talk about today. I was thinking that we have 4 weeks of learning left, 3 lessons per week. That's 12 lessons. And I have, I don't know, 7 or 8 chapters that I would love to be able to get through in that time. Clearly, we're not going to be able to do that to the extent that I would like to, but I'm going to do my best to at least get through kind of the big ideas from each of those chapters. So last week we started with weather, and then we went into severe weather, and we made a tornado safety plan. That was going back into last week, the week before that also. And then you did, hopefully you did something nice for Earth Day. I haven't seen everyone put an entry on the slideshow yet, but I've seen quite a few of them. Back to weather. So weather was things like temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind, those kinds of things. And that is all specific to being at a specific place at a specific time. So when we talk about weather, it's always where are you talking about and when are you talking about. So if someone says, well, what's the weather like in North Fond du Lac? We have to say, well, could you be more specific? What's the weather like on Memorial Day, May 26th or 27th this year, 25th, can't remember, but what's the weather like end of May? Or what's the weather like January 1st in North Fond du Lac? So we always have to be very specific with weather. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to compare weather to climate. And climate is going to be the topic for this week. For this first lesson, in hopefully less than 15 minutes, I'm going to go through the important things of the entire chapter that I have sent to you already, just hitting on the big ideas. Then tomorrow we're going to look specifically at Wisconsin's climate and how that is changing over time. And then on Wednesday, we're going to look at a more global view of climate and how is climate changing historically since about the late 1800s. So that's the plan for the week. So we're going to jump right into it right now. All right. So you can follow along with me in chapter 17 right here. And here we go. So as we scroll down, we have to start by defining what climate is. And as you can see in the center section here, it says climate is a pattern of weather that occurs in an area over many years. Climate is like the average. And typically scientists use, as you can see, a 30-year, sometimes up to a 50-year or 100-year average to determine climate. So when you open up that weather app that you've gotten on your phone, you can look and see what the average temperature for April 27th is. That's talking about climate. Take the last 30 April 27th, add up all the temperatures, divide by 30, what's the average? That's climate. All right, so climate is an average over a long period of time, which also really irritates me when, let's say, we get a warm day in the winter or let's try a cold day in the spring or summer, and people say, well, so much for climate change. Well, what you're talking about is weather, right? If it's cold on a day or even a week or even a year, that's just weather. But climate is when we take that and we average it in with the last 30 or 50 days or years. And so we have to be very careful to know the difference between weather and climate. All right, climate's an average over a long period of time. I'm guessing that you can realize that there are different climates at different latitudes. The further you are towards the North Pole or the South Pole, the colder it is. Those are the polar zones. And then we've got the temperate zones, which is where we live. And then near the equator, we have the tropics. So those are the major climate zones that we have, and each has their own characteristic, temperatures and other factors in those particular areas. There are other factors as well that impact a place's climate. like large bodies of water. If you happen to live near the oceans or even the Great Lakes, they can have a big impact on the climate that you have at your particular location. Ocean currents. Some ocean currents bring warm water. Other ocean currents bring cooler water, depending upon where you're at on planet Earth. So, water has an impact on places, on their climate, and so do mountains. Mountains, as you know, the higher you go up in mountains, the cooler it gets. They also impact wind and precipitation and those kinds of things. So, though all of those factors impact our climate. Cities themselves can impact a place's climate because things like concrete and steel, they hold heat more than, say, trees or grass. So lots of factors go into an individual place's climate. All right. Now, skipping ahead, we've got the different climate types, which we already talked a little bit about. This is also stuff that was probably seventh grade geography, I'm guessing, maybe even a little bit of life science in here. But I want to talk about how plants and animals can change with their climate. So we know that some plants and animals, um, they have adaptations, a structure or behavior that helps an organism survive in its environment. And as the environment changes, either the organism changes along with it or the organism doesn't survive. And those are really the only choices for those organisms, which we've talked about with natural selection. You can see on this map the different climate types. You get the arid, the semi-arid, which are like deserty, more dry, tropical, mild, all of those kinds of things. So not hugely important other than for you to know that, we're in a mild climate here. You can look down a little bit further. Animals over the years have adapted behaviorally. Some of them hibernate. For instance, around here, bears. They're roaming around right now in the spring and summer and fall, but in winter, when food sources dry up, maybe even access to drinking water, they hibernate. All right, and there are lots of other animals that have these behavioral adaptations as well. Plants, similarly, can have behavioral adaptations. And scrolling down further to number 3 here, section 3, climatic changes. There are lots of things that can cause a climate to change. We have seasons where we live. If we live by the equator, we don't really have seasons there because it's always, sunnyish, warmish, right? They don't have winters and even falls and springs really near the equator. So the tilt of the earth causes places near the North Pole or the South Pole to go through these seasonal changes. And you can see in this picture, and this is something we'll study more in the next chapter, when we look at the sun, earth, and moon system, the tilt of the earth causing seasons. But here you can see in the winter, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, so we get less direct sunlight. It's colder. In the summer, the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. We get more direct sunlight, and it's warmer. So there are seasonal changes based on the tilt of the earth. Also, high latitudes. That means, closer to the North Pole or the South Pole creates these climactic changes. There are a couple of things that have to do with the temperature of the water in the oceans, El Nino and La Nina, that also can impact climate. And those are more cyclical, but you can see that ocean temperatures can increase by 1 to 7 degrees Celsius off the coast of some places. And that increased heat in the water can increase or change the climate in that particular location. And this goes on to describe a little bit about how those two things work. When we have changes in climate, it can also lead to natural disasters that can kill people. It can cause damage. You can see if our climate changes to get more rain, we can have landslides. We can have flooding. If it's hotter, we can have more severe storms, or we can have drought in particular areas and crops fail. So any change in climate can have a real impact on a particular location. All right. There's a bottom line when we talk about climate, and the bottom line is this: our climate is changing. It's not up for debate. Scientists don't debate it. The climate is changing. And we're going to look specifically at how it's changing in Wisconsin and other locations as well. But there are some natural causes that can cause climates to change. One would be volcanic eruptions. When all that ash is put up into the atmosphere, it blocks out sunlight. It can actually lower the temperatures for years in some cases. Volcanoes also erupt carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, which can trap heat. So over time, that increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere also leads to higher temperatures. So it cools in the short term, warms in the long term. All right. Energy from the sun. There is a small amount of change in the solar energy that's emitted from the sun in a cyclical period. It can have a small effect on changing climates. The Earth actually has a little bit of a wobble on its axis, and so it can change the tilt of the Earth slightly as it relates to the sun, which can cause either more direct sunlight or less direct sunlight. So there are some natural phenomenon that can lead to some climate change. However, the major climate change that we are seeing in your lifetime is mostly occurring due to human choices, burning of fossil fuels, for instance. It's called the greenhouse effect, which you should be familiar with. It's a natural heating process that occurs. Basically, in the greenhouse, if you've ever been in a greenhouse, sunlight travels through the glass. It's not impeded by the glass at all. When that sunlight hits something inside the greenhouse, that light energy is transferred into heat energy, and the heat can't escape back through the glass. So light comes in, it's transferred to heat, the heat's trapped inside that greenhouse. That's really what's happening on planet Earth. The atmosphere acts as our glass ceiling. Light travels through that atmosphere. It's converted to heat, and then carbon dioxide traps that heat inside our atmosphere, which is warming the planet. And we're going to look specifically at those numbers as we move forward. Back when this book was created in 2006, we called that global warming. It's not totally accurate. The entire globe is not warming. As I will show you later in the week, there are some places that have actually experienced some cooling. Almost all of those places are small and in the oceans. So not really in many places that impact humans. So for the most part, planet Earth all across the globe is warming, and humans have a responsibility for that, which we'll talk about. There are some other ways besides burning fossil fuels that humans are contributing to this greenhouse effect. Deforestation, when we cut down trees, we know trees breathe in carbon dioxide. When we cut them down, all of that carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere. Not to mention, they can't absorb any carbon dioxide, so it's almost a double whammy. Also, lots of times when trees are cut down for more agricultural land or for cities, they burn the trees, which also leads to an increase in carbon dioxide and other pollutants in the atmosphere. As you can see here, let's see, that takes us to the end of the entire chapter. We spent about 13 minutes going through one full chapter on climate. Here are the big ideas. 1, climate is a pattern over time, 30 to 50-year averages. All right, that's climate. There are natural causes of a changing climate, like volcanoes, solar cycles, the wobble of the Earth's tilt on its axis. And then there are also some man-made human problems that are leading to a changing climate, like burning fossil fuels, deforestation, overpopulation. We'll touch on a few of those for the rest of the week. So, your job for the day hopefully was to watch this entire video. I don't know, 15 minutes. It's a lot. Usually I require 49 minutes of your time. Here I'm requiring 15. I think you should be able to do that. All right. No excuses. Watch the video. And then I want you to take the short quiz that I'll have for today as well. Remember those quizzes every week. We sit down with Mr. Gonzalez and we say, hey, did so-and-so do what they needed to do to pass your class this week? That's what I'm basing it on, are those quizzes. So make sure you do them and make sure that you do them as well as you possibly can. All right. Any questions, email me. Google Hangout, Google Meet, whatever you need. I'm available during the week. Just get a hold of me and I will be here to help you. All right. So with that said, welcome to your introduction to climate. And tomorrow we will talk specifically about Wisconsin's climate and how that's changing over time. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.